We're live.
Live now? Let me say, this is a meeting of the Education Committee of the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. The meeting is being held pursuant to, in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meetings law and Executive Law Section 94. Both the meeting room we're using the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan, and the conference room at the Commission's offices in Albany at 540 Broadway are open to the public during open session. The meeting is also being live streamed. The link for the live stream can be found on the Commission's website at ethics.ny.gov. In addition, we have at least one Commissioner Karras, who is attending remotely pursuant to Public Officers Law Section 103-A and the Commission's rules and regulations for remote participation in exceptional circumstances. And I can state that we do have a quorum of commissioners present here at the New York State Conference Center.
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending. If Mr. Braun mentioned, this is the Education Committee, and we're here to examine a proposed recommendation that we'd like to bring, that we need to bring before the Commission at the meeting on the 27th of May. As you know, this has been tabled for discussion. Last year, we submitted we submitted and received approval of our 2025-2028 strategic plan, with the understanding that we would not provide full details as to how we would govern the operations of the education unit or education training programs. We wanted to honor staff's request to have some time to experience a full cycle of training and to spend more time working on the infrastructure for a sustained education program. And so to that, staff has worked and presented us with a plan about a month ago. Each member of the committee had the opportunity to review that plan. They heard our comments and concerns, and it was resubmitted in time for this meeting, and you received a copy of that plan in your package this week. I hope you've had the opportunity to review. We don't want to spend a lot of time going over the details. Commissioner Berlin will give you a brief overview, and then we'll move right into questions and answers and concerns. If this meeting is successful, we will present recommendations to the Commission on the 27th. The report is detailed, but nothing is carved in stone. Please feel free to make any suggested changes or comments, which will be taken into consideration. Before I end, I just want to mention that I wanted to thank the staff for working so hard to getting all this material to us in time for today's meeting. We did a great job. Sandy.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. I should say that the education unit's 3-year plan, as amended, represents a huge amount of work by the head of the Education and Training Unit, Marlena Diaz, our Senior Deputy Director for Training Management, and Audria Norton, Assistant Director of Training in the unit, who have put in countless hours to develop the plan. The plan and the proposal to revise the plan that was provisionally adopted by the Commission last year is based on the experience we've had over the past 3.5+ years since ECRA went into effect. In that period of time, over 600,000 members of the executive branch workforce, as well as members and employees of the legislature, have taken ethics training. Most of them have taken the live, whether in person or online, Comprehensive ethics training course, roughly a 2-hour course. Smaller number of that group have taken on-demand training. And the statute provides for a biennial cycle, beginning with live training followed by refresher training. And then the cycle repeats in the 3rd year. All new employees are required by the statute within 90 days of starting state employment to take the comprehensive ethics training course. In 2025, which was kind of the key year, we had set the goal of having every executive branch employee complete a full 2-year cycle of live and on-demand training, or 2 live courses. In fact, we're relatively successful. Something in the neighborhood of the statistical variations, but somewhere in the neighborhood of nearly 200,000 individuals took live training, 40 to 50,000 took on-demand training. It's 250,000 individual trainings administered in 1 year. Fell short of the goal, training 330,000 people. We do know that there's some number of individuals who didn't take training in 25, and an additional number who didn't take training in 24 or 25. Earlier this year, that number of individuals, basically the delta between the 250, 260,000 who took training in 2025, those who didn't. The commission agreed that rather than trying to have those individuals make up their missed trainings and submit to another training, which would have required the overall system to train in excess of 400,000 people in 2026 to get current. The commission agreed that we would prioritize the training of those individuals who didn't train in 2025 or 2024. Then move on with the plan ultimately to bring the entire system on track of having everyone taking live or on-demand training every year, and the following year, the reverse. So if they're taking live training the following year, take a refresher course, and if they're taking the refresher course in 26, they would go on to take live training the following year. The training unit has devised the plan to meet the challenges that they've identified, and those are outlined on the first page of the training unit's proposal. Limited agency training administration resources, challenges related to the data we're able to collect, consistently obtain, discrepancies in the data between reported data coming through the system, aggregate data reported into our training unit. The fact that our unit is unable to communicate directly with at least half of the workforce. We have to rely on agency ethics officers and trainers at least half of the time to communicate training requirements, training schedules, arrange training. Insufficient mechanisms for feedback from training participants and agency personnel on the impact and effectiveness of the training was being. Training participants in our training are asked to complete a survey at the conclusion of training. We do collect that information, so we have that base. But for a good deal of the participants in the training, we don't have that kind of feedback. And we're too early in the system overall to have specific information about the impact of training on behavior within the workforce. And we do know that inquiries to our advice and guidance unit has soared over the past 3 years. I think we're probably seeing, Michael, triple what occurred under the prior agency.
Numbers that on a monthly basis, triple what we used to see, say, 6-7 years ago.
So it's gone up substantially.
Yes.
And now we're training not only 10 times as many people overall, So it used to be training, ethics training, former statute was limited to those who file financial disclosure statements, so roughly a tenth of the work. Of course, now we're doing 100%. But that training was triennial. Now it's annual. It's really a 30-fold increase in training. And we are seeing very substantial increase in guidance requests. But what other behaviors are being impacted remains to be measured in any sort of disciplined way. And finally, not only are there no penalties for not, at least that we administer, agencies may have other approaches that they can take in the way of discipline. But this agency is not empowered to, at this point, to impose discipline on those who don't take their training at all or are required to. We don't have a positive incentivizer for taking training at this point. And that may be, it's not just a question of a stick, but maybe carrots are needed as well, a little bit along. But taking those challenges and others into account, Marlena, Audrey have put together a 3-year plan that's aimed at overcoming those challenges, both in maximizing the resources that we have available, maximizing the resources that we can provide and are otherwise available to agencies which do the bulk of the training, live training currently. Improving communications, having upgrades and improvements made to statewide ethics training application that we use to monitor training. Add capabilities to it to ease scheduling of training, dealing with some of the bugs we have in the system. Many agencies are using the Office of Employee Relations, statewide learning management system to track their trainings. That system, we had hoped would be able to communicate directly with ours. It's not working the way we would like it to. We need to make some modifications to that. And there are many, many other proposals that have been made, with the goal of using the next 3 years to address those issues, get the training numbers up, to improve the availability and communication concerning resources, and generally get the executive branch workforce in line to take training every year as it should. Some other things need to be done. The way we administer on-demand training and keep track of that data has to be eased, especially for agencies who are using it, and a number of other things. And I should say the plan aligns with the 4 overall goals that the committee and the commission have set: to continue to provide oversight of COLEG's education training programs, present recommendations on policies and practices for education and training in response to findings from research and other tools that measure performance over the next 3 years, take into account testimony, public hearings, and other feedback we get, including from the ethics forums that Audrey and Marlena are conducting with ethics officers across the span of the executive branch. And also eventually working toward a plan to measure the effectiveness of the training program.
Are there any questions, comments? Seymour, Commissioner James.
You're muted.
Mr. James, do you have any comments?
I'm quite comfortable with the plan.
My question is to Michael, and that is, how comfortable are you with all of this?
I'm comfortable with the plan. I know that the team has put a lot of work, thought into it. This is the result of a lot of effort, many hours of thought and consideration.
I mean, it seems very ambitious to me, and every time I see a goal of 100% compliance, I quiver a little bit because it seems almost unreasonable. So I want to make sure you're not setting yourselves up for failure in obvious ways.
That's me, the 100%. The statute says everybody has to take training, and that has to be our goal. Can that be achieved? You know, how close can we get to it?
One of the things I'd like to see, and this may already be baked into your plan, is I think the statute is a little, I don't know what it is, but to require this live training every 2 years and the alternate years, the refresher, and it's a different format and everything else, it seems confusing. And it seems just sort of necessarily cumbersome or something. But, you know, does the data and will data show a higher level or lower level of compliance with either one of those types of training? And do the majority of people understand what they have to do and remember, oh, this is my live year, this is
Well, we're in the process of getting that message out to everybody. I would say that ethics officers who, or the agency administrators who handle the training on the agency side, they're learning all these things, and they are hopefully transmitting that message to their employees. We're working with them to make sure that that message gets out. You're right, it is confusing. And it does require some effort. As you said, the statute requires some effort on the part of state employees to figure out what they're supposed to do. But the message is getting out.
way down the road, we can automate some of this, automate reminders to people.
That would be great. Part of the problem is that there's no one central system that touches every single state employee.
Yeah, I mean, we have built a unique system in an effort to get to that point of having every executive branch employee system. Going into it, we kind of thought that payroll and controller's office might have that. Other offices within state government doesn't exist, so we built a unique system. It's not yet fully populated, and whether we'll ever have the means directly to communicate with everyone remains to be seen, but we're halfway there. We do have email addresses now, can directly communicate about half the workforce, and we want to get to the point where we can, at least for on demand, centralize not only reminders, but scheduling. Send an email with a link.
And then I guess my last sort of overall comment is, well, thank you very much for the glossary and this little depiction of the Kirkpatrick model. I found that really interesting. And, you know, I think several of us on the committee have indicated that we're really interested in a sort of an evaluation or effectiveness assessment. And looking at this, the depiction of this model, knowing nothing more about it than what's on this page, I was just wondering if is this model something we could build an effectiveness assessment from?
I would defer to Audrey. I don't want to speak to the research I've done, which is Google, but
So I think we do have an opportunity to get some more data by working off of this model on our direct impacts following course delivery. We can get some information on what are folks actually taking away from our training program. To move up to a level 3 or a level 4, that's where we're really going to need partnerships with our stakeholders, because that kind of data has to come from that level.
That's an interesting thought. We're looking 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see a distinction though between the data collect, which I think is very good, the data that the tools you're using to measure compliance and pay participant satisfaction. And they're really strong, and I really appreciate you doing that. But I see the kind of data you're collecting I see that kind of data helps us to look at the compliance issue and the satisfaction issue. I don't necessarily see it, and maybe you could help me understand it better, as a way of measuring quality. And I was wondering, I'm thinking that our fourth goal, which talks about independent research, would speak to that and would be different from what you're collecting. What you're collecting could be the data that we use to develop and build upon. But I just see them as having two distinct efforts. Your comments?
Yeah, I think you're right. At a level 1 or a level 2, we're really just looking at the quality of our training program. When you start moving up to how is the training actually affecting behavior and performance, then you're looking at what's the impact on the workforce. And that's different than what's the quality of our training product. So I think to your point, yes, right now, where we're focused and where we'd like to align is by understanding current satisfaction with our training and then starting to collect data on what folks are walking away from knowing from having participated in our training, and then eventually leading to that next level of understanding what's the actual impact on the workforce.
Okay, so then can you adjust the work plan to reflect that language?
Sure, absolutely.
I have another question I might ask. I know we've discussed the fact that our services and resources are underutilized, that we're not getting the kind of requests, the level of requests for all the resources we have available. Can you tell me how you plan to address that in this statement?
Sure. I think for us, our priority is that in the last 3 to 4 years, we've collected a substantial amount of data, but looking at the data now in 2026, we're asking ourselves, did we collect the right kind of data, right? Because you can have an overabundance of data, but the data might not be the most accurate in being able to allow us to forecast and kind of ramp up our training efforts. And that's really where we are right now. The biggest indicator for us would be with respect to outreach, right? That's really how we're going to be able to scale up a lot of our current deliveries, because to Commissioner Scott's point, 100% compliance makes us nervous, makes us as a training unit a little bit nervous as well when it comes to an overarching goal, when we're still trying to build the infrastructure, right? We're still trying to communicate to agencies on a regular basis, multiple times a week, the actual training cycle. To your previous point, it is confusing for a lot of agencies to make that determination that half of their workforce is required 1 year to take live training versus having to take the on-demand, in the intervening years. And we've noticed that has become a common theme for us when we're doing these individual outreach meetings, from agencies letting us know that that's the biggest challenge for them in a lot of ways when it comes to administering the training program internally within their own agency. So we're trying to handle more of the administrative burden. A great example is that we just recently had a meeting yesterday with the statewide learning management system and their ITS architects, trying to determine ways that we can create some type of universal system that all agencies that utilize SLIMs, as an example, in the executive branch are able to kind of create those live internal class deliveries. Therefore, we're kind of minimizing a lot of those discrepancies. As you're aware, public resources, the resources that we have to deliver live training right now, we can effectively train around 18% of the state workforce, which equates to around 62,000 state employees. we're utilizing different methods of being able to do direct outreach to these agencies, whether it's taking the level of email information that we currently have in the system and sending out more targeted ones. So we're trying to target right now the SUNY CUNY populations. And as an example, recently this week we sent out 8,000 emails to those employees who are eligible to take an on-demand. So we're trying to remove a lot of the administration from the agencies and instead taking the information and the data that we have and being able to parse that out into specific outreach efforts in the hopes that these individual employees are able to better take use of our resources instead of exclusively relying on the agencies to communicate the messages on our behalf. Because we've noticed in the last couple of years that despite their best efforts, our post-course survey results keep informing us that around 30% of the population are attending our trainings because they're receiving direct communication from us. So we're trying to reach out to some of those agencies and that we've noticed have, let's say, their populations of employees don't have a lot of emails, in there. We're trying to reach out to our SUNYs and to our CUNYs and trying to gather that information so that we can bolster our direct employee outreach because we've noticed that it is effective. It is working. However, it's a challenge for us to be able to kind of make those connections. So that's really where we're trying to focus our efforts for the rest of 2026. While also creating enhancements in the application and moving the application away from just your typical tracking portal to more of the functionalities that a lot of employees may recognize in a learning management system. A big priority for us is empowering employees to be able to use SETA to look up their training compliance. That's something that we've noticed again and again come into our trainings, our chats, and our forums, that employees necessarily don't want to have to rely exclusively on the agency to inform them which training class they're due for. Has their training been recorded in the system so that they can be more proactive in being able to make sure that they're compliant by the end of the year?
You mentioned that the capacity is 18% right now. But you have the capacity to reach 18% of the population, representing about 62,000 employees. What capacity are we at now?
Right now, due to our outreach efforts, we are seeing that the majority of our classes are maxed out. However, on a statewide level, the numbers that we need to be hitting in order for us to meet that end of year goal, we're not hitting those numbers.
My question is, what are you hitting? What percentage are you hitting after that?
We're doing well with respect to our training numbers. The state as a whole is not. To give you an example, for each quarter, the state should be training around 65 to 68,000 employees. We're in the middle of quarter 2 right now, and in total, based off of the agency data that we have received, we've only seen around 58,000 employees be trained as of right now. So statewide, not doing great. Our efforts, however, most of our classes are all at capacity. We're training around anywhere from 200 to 400 folks per session. So our internal outreach efforts are successful. On a statewide level, we're not hitting those numbers that those agencies should be hitting as of right now.
And, remember, we're talking about live training.
Right.
Last year, 2025, the preponderance of the training that was 80% of the training that was conducted was live training. That means that there's 80% of the workforce that's eligible to take on-demand training this year. So the numbers we're talking about are live training. That 18% is not 18% of 100%. It's 18%, really doubled. It's about a third of the live trainings that need to be pushed out in a year. We should ideally have balanced the workforce. This has been our goal from the beginning. It hasn't been realized because of underutilization of on-demand training. But we wanted to have a cycle of half the workforce taking live, half taking on-demand in any given year. The numbers we're talking about hitting now, we're low on live training. We're about half of where we need to be, but we're even lower on on-demand training. That part of the system is not being much utilized at
And
all.
stop, we do the demand, they want the online demand, the
We-
live
we-
training.
Yeah, but the tracking is the more complicated part. So the training is easy for anybody who has any kind of device, a smartphone,
Okay,
a tablet, a laptop, work computer, whatever, to take it. The harder part is the data keeping, the data management, and getting word out to individuals that they're eligible for on demand.
so I don't want to belabor the point. We can go and talk about that offline, but I'm just concerned about my understanding that one of the concerns you had in the past was that our training staff is,
Is
I don't want to put it
underutilized.
that way, is underutilized, but that employees are not taking advantage
Correct.
of all that we have,
Yeah,
I'll put it that way. And of course, is how do you get it? What does that look like now? And I hear what you're trying to achieve. I just want to be able to measure the success of it over a 3-year period. And I'm not getting that right now, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
No, exactly. And I go back to last year's experience, which was that toward the end of the year, our resources were much more heavily used than earlier in the year. And that's what helped to push the numbers up. The training team really put on a huge effort to get all comers trained. They did that. The agencies were working hard too. But it was all falling in the latter part of the year. This year, we were hoping that we would focus on those who missed training in 25 and or 24 and get those in early. And there was a surge earlier on, right, in registrations, Marlena? Month or two
I'm
ago.
sorry, Sandy, can you repeat that?
Yeah, we did have a surge in enrollments in the live training a couple of months ago. It's fallen off.
Correct. We had the priority population outreach, which allowed us to target those employees who had not been trained and make sure and ensure that a lot of those employees were trained in the first half of the year. Recently, our communications department was able to send out a survey to ethics officers, training directors and staff, and HR professionals. And we've learned that the majority of training, whether internal training does happen at the last quarter, unfortunately, of the calendar year. And based off of the survey results that we've received thus far from that population of people that have taken the survey, around 20 to 25% of those respondents utilize Colleague as their primary resource. So that really supports the data when it comes to our Q4 numbers. We were training twice a day, pretty much every day, the last quarter of 2025 to meet the demand. But a huge barrier and a challenge for us is how do we bolster those enrollments throughout the year, because it's not possible for Colleague to be able to train the entire state workforce in Q4. It's really just not possible for us. So we're trying to focus a lot of our attention, as I mentioned before, in direct employee outreach and figuring out new creative ways of we can drive up those enrollments. But enrollments, as you know, don't always equal completions. Even though we were at 60% capacity when it came to Q4, the folks that were actually attending training, dropped down as well. We could have up to 600 folks attend one WebEx, but we may only have 400 completions, per session. So that's another thing that we also have to consider for the upcoming Q4.
Commissioner Carvella, I know you have a question. Can I just ask you a minute? Let me get it from Commissioner Karras because he has to leave at 3. Okay. Commissioner Karras, you had a question. Do you have any questions?
Maybe.
I had one sort of question comment, and that's, since we're not going to be able to sort of evaluate for a while what the results of what impact the training is having in terms of compliance, is there any data other than like calls to attorney of the day that we should be gathering or asking agency ethics officers to gather so that when we get to that point, we have some sort of baseline? One thing that popped into my head was maybe outside activity for numbers of outside activity forms filed, like, are those going up as we do more training? Because I guess my worry would be that in 3 years, we hire a consultant or we set up some method of analyzing the impact of our trainings, but we don't have any sort of baseline data to compare it against.
The only problem with that is, it would make sense if you're going to do this research in 3 years, it would make sense to have that consultant looking at it at the beginning so that it can put the systems in place to measure at the end. That is problematic, but that's going to be a problem with funding, I know for sure. That's the issue.
Yes, you're 100% right.
You're absolutely right. It makes sense to have that consultant to work with us up front to tell us the kind of data.
But maybe is there, I'm just saying something to think about. I'm not asking for answers. Is there data that maybe we want to ask agency ethics officers to be collecting, so that 3 years from now, we have 3 years of that data. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of where Marlena and Audrey are on this. With respect to things like outside activity requests, post-employment requests, those come through agencies, other inquiries. We can confirm with agency ethics officers that they do keep that information. I think we
Okay, yeah, because that might be,
we
we might decide in 3 years that we need that information, or we want to make sure people have been maintaining it.
Well, I'm sure they keep records, maybe not of every interaction they have. The issue I would have is it has placed an enormous burden on agency ethics officers. The training mandate and the data keeping that goes with it.
Right. No, I know.
Substantial.
And anyway, it was just a thought as I was reading the.
Yeah, no. It's a good point, and I at least have been operating on the assumption that an expert, if we have the resources, right now we're struggling to have resources to pay for trainers and data keepers here.
Right.
That's
Right.
an issue for us in the current budgetary cycle. So, this whole discussion is contingent upon having adequate funding to have the system, and not just for us, but for agencies as well. But it's a good point. It's a good point.
No, to echo on Commissioner Karras' point, it's an excellent point, because based off of the preliminary results that we've received from the survey, we can deduce now that a lot of agencies are looking for COLA guidance with respect to additional guidance for requests for FCS, as an example. The highest areas were gifts, as well as conflicts of interest and outside activities. So initially, we are understanding that based off of our trainings and based off of the information that we're providing to employees, agencies now are seeking additional guidance from us with respect to these subject matter areas.
Right. It would, like I said, it would be great to know that, outside activity requests to agency ethics officers have increased by X percent since 2022, or something like that. And I'm just putting that out there.
Absolutely, we're very sensitive to that.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, Commissioner Harris? Any other questions, Commissioner Harris?
No. Thank you, Claudia.
Commissioner Carabello?
I just had a quick question. Did you say that 80% of those that trained in 2025 took online courses?
No, the opposite.
Okay.
Of the 250,000 or so who we have data showing that they trained, about 200,000, give or take, were live. 40 to 50,000 were on demand. So about 80% of that 80% was live.
Oh, okay.
Or at least it's recorded as live.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And then my second question is, you said, Dana, that people sign up for the courses and they start the training but don't complete it. And I'm just wondering, is that a factor of the glitches with certifying that you took the course, or is there another way that you're measuring that?
Just to clarify, the issue is that we will max out on all of our enrollments, meaning we can get up to 400 folks who are requesting to take training with us on any given day. However, on the actual day of the delivery, we may only have upwards of 200 to 250 employees that actually attend training. And generally, we have to attribute that to scheduling conflicts or other things that may come up in that particular, employee's day-to-day schedule. But we've noticed that as a reoccurring trend. As an example, we can open up the classes to allow up to 600 comfortably. However, we may only have 300 that may show up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of piggyback a little bit on Executive Director Berlin's comments, it made sense for there to be such an uptick in live deliveries for the 2025 calendar year, because the majority of state employees, when they became first aware of the requirement, actually started in 2023, and the majority of those employees did in fact take live training in 2023. So it makes sense from a data standpoint that we would see such a huge uptick in live deliveries for the 2025, because they were in essence due to retake live training in the 2025 calendar year.
Thank you.
Any additional any questions? Mr. Wilcott, do you have any questions?
I am fine, listening and learning. I do not.
So your thoughts on this proposal, your thoughts on submitting this to, what is your recommendation to the commission at our next meeting, the committee members?
Recommend it. Yeah. It's well done. I understand the issues, but I also understand that for us to be able really to effectively measure the results, we have to start here, complete this completely, and get this plan underway. And then, or not completely, I shouldn't say that, at least for the, maybe for the second year, we could start measuring better the effectiveness of the people who take the training and of our training,
But what I like about this proposal, staff has really thought about ways to measure performance over the 3-year period, and I really appreciate that.
Yes.
So the plan then, we have a plan for a plan. Assuming that, we go forward and with this and the commission approves it in May, I'm assuming that you're already working on this. Work is being done every day. Is there any plan for when you might come back to the committee to talk about progress towards each, the goal? I don't think we need that.
We are required statutorily to prepare for the legislature and the governor quarterly reports. Quarterly reports on, in the aggregate, on training performance, and an annual report at a more granular agency level. That's in terms of number of individuals who have taken live training, number who have taken on-demand training, and the number who have not trained in a given quarter. So it's at that level.
So the question is back to the committee.
Yeah.
We usually come back. But my goal is, my vision of working with staff is that we do a lot of upload. And I see meeting again, maybe September, October.
Sooner than I would have thought.
We can stretch that out. We can meet once a year.
And we are providing numbers at every commission meeting.
But I mean, there's a lot in here that isn't just numbers.
Oh,
So,
right.
happy to see quarterly numbers. but I'd also just like the spirit of the staff, on a semi-annual basis, maybe of where are pain points in this, what's going well, and what you might want to tweak, what goals you might want to tweak or adjust or modify, so that we're not caught up, say, 2 years in,
No.
hearing that there have been these insurmountable problems.
Well, we meet at least once because we like to look at how they reach their benchmark after each year. But I like to do it on a quarterly basis as needed. Sometimes we don't, last year, I think we met twice last year. So like 3 times. We didn't meet
3
4
times.
times.
We didn't meet.
So we kind of touch base with the executive director, but I kind of want to get there between September and October. Remember, this should have been done. This should have been presented in February.
That's right.
In February. It was tabled for 2 months. So if we do it in February, then we would automatically meet like in September, October.
So I would just be interested in more than just numbers, just sort of a qualitative assessment of scales.
Okay. I have another question for you. What I tried to do is to do a summary of the goal of the staff's plan. I see this more operational. That outline the specifics of what their plan is. And I tried to, to make it less complicated and summarize it in this document. So, there are 2 things I'd like to ask you to consider. One, that I probably just tool the cover letter a little bit so that people know that this is just a summary, and for further details, refer to the staff's plan, or eliminate eliminate the document that I prepared for the commission. Again, it's only designed to simplify and make it, we don't want to get into weeds of things, but again, the report is so thorough and it's much easier to read than the first document. I want to put forth to the committee your wishes with regard to whether this is helpful or rather us eliminate.
You did so much work, Claudia, and I really appreciate it. I think that the plan that the staff has created, this revised plan, is very clear. It's fulsome. I think presenting this without a summary,
Okay.
I think is fine. That's just.
No.
Well, I found the summary helpful. When I first looked at it, it was, I think it's easier to look printed actually, but when I looked at it on a screen and, I was going back and forth, sort of trying to figure out what the goals and stuff were. And then I looked at your summary and then went back. So it was clearer, of course, now that I looked at the summary and I'm looking at it for the second time. So I don't think there's any harm in submitting the report as well, but that's up to you, Madam Chair.
Is Jim still on the line? No, he's gone. I'll text him and see his thoughts, if you don't mind. And if he's okay with it, then we'll do it, but I'll just make sure that I articulate that more clearly, that this is just a summary.
And an explanation, because we're always asking, like, where did this come from? Sort of, for people who are not on the committee, they might be like, what are we looking at and why are we looking at it now? So the summaries are helpful in that regard as well.
I think I want to mention that if we kind of skipped over it on the plan. Sandy, if you could just briefly, like 5 minutes, talk about the contingencies. I was really, I should make the executive director may be aware of the many contingencies that we need to be cognizant of as we move forward with this plan. One in particular, we're playing a plan without knowing what our budget is.
Correct.
And this is, this is assuming a full budget. And we put them in a very precarious situation to lay out these goals, not having a sense of whether or not I'm funding. So if you want to just speak briefly about the contingencies, because again, we don't want to set you up for failure. We need to understand what you're up against in order to achieve these objectives.
Yeah, I mean, from a budgetary perspective, we have several challenges. The the training unit in particular has been impacted by the impasse we've had over the past year over prospect budgeting. We're now into the first of the two follow-on years that were in question when we were wanting to fill vacancies. So we went into 2025 down with the vacancy in one training position and one really essential data position. So we've got the trainers we do have having to bear the burden of entering a lot of the data that the unit is working with. We're told by Division of Budget that in order to fill out our full headcount, we need to demonstrate the ability to fund those positions this year and next year. And we don't have this year's budget. We certainly don't have next year's budget. If we don't have budgetary relief, we will be down one trainer, at least one trainer. We're currently down two trainers because of the vacancy that staff is trying working very hard to fill. But one trainer and one assistant data keeper. We will make a priority. We have shifts and things to fill those positions regardless, but that's a problem. There are changes that need to really improvements and enhancements that are needed in the CETA system. And we are dependent on resources from state information technology services to make those enhancements. They're kind of stalled right now because we're in the process of enhancing other systems we have that we would like to replace. We have asked for budgetary support to replace those systems so that we can free up ITS resources to work on the system. Without that, there are huge challenges. Taking many of the data steps that are outlined.
Let me ask you this question. Oh, he's back again. Let me ask you a question. If we don't get full funding for this year, how will that impact year one's goals significantly? And do we need to, I'm saying this because I know we're going to get an answer on the budget before the meeting. Do we want to suggest that we would make recommendations based on amendments you make on this to adjust year one's goals if you don't get the funding you need?
Let me ask Marlena, Audria, if we don't.
It'd be detrimental. It'd be detrimental, honestly. I mean, right now we have a very small unit. We're trying to scale up while simultaneously consistently delivering trainings, while scaling up our outreach efforts, responding to hundreds of emails on a weekly basis. In addition to that, we're also in the process of going back and forth with our private vendor for, to be able to launch a new enhanced online ethics refresher. We're regularly presenting now for training directors statewide who are utilizing the statewide learning management system. We are operating well outside of our current resources. So if we're not able to scale up in that way, our ability to meet year one mandates will suffer.
I'd like to recommend that if you don't get the full funding you need, that you make those adjustments before in time for the next meeting. Let us know what that is. And I would suggest that as a committee, we would look at it and consider supporting it. Or not.
We may not know in time for the next meeting. A budget is not expected this week. So it depends on when the budget is finalized. We can endeavor to do that, but just as we all would like to know, we're anxiously waiting. We might not know.
You mentioned that we wouldn't know in time for the meeting.
Well, it really depends on whether there's movement in the state budget. I think there were expectations that we would have.
Well, I suggest we adjust this because I do, again, this is me. It's very ambitious, even with full funding. And we don't want to present something that we know is not going to work.
But But I also don't want to ask staff to have to prepare a modified plan for something that may or may not happen in the next 10 days. And that seems, can we present it to the commission with a, like, if we don't get the funding we expect?
Well, the
this would be
contingencies,
modified?
the plan contingencies are there.
Yeah, I mean, to plot out, it's, you know, we're staff training unit is already working in what I would call almost an austerity mode. You know, they're making things happen. And in spite of that, and the successes they've achieved have been in spite of that. How long they can maintain that kind of momentum remains to be seen, but the workarounds, what the workarounds are, if there are workarounds, you know, we could well, I'm gonna have to obviously defer to Audrey and Marlena, but I could conceive of basically hitting a wall.
Yeah.
If we can't have the improvements made to the tracking system, if we can't have the adaptations to OER, if we don't have enough trainers, it's a real problem. But my vision, at least, is to have more on-demand training done to take some of the pressure off the live training component of this, which is a burden for everyone. But on-demand is only going to work at high volume we need if we have system support for it, and we don't. As I understand it, some agency ethics officers prefer live training because it's easier to track the data than on demand in a dispersed system. That's putting pressure, across the board. I mean, you could say, well, we'll just add a couple of years to the timeline,
Right.
but that may not actually be sufficient.
We probably need to emphasize that at our meeting.
Right.
The commission need
Right.
to understand that.
Well, as you said, the contingencies are the contingencies. The plan doesn't work. What we have instead, if
Yeah, and
we have something else, is very different.
maybe right here, and when you describe plan contingencies, you just sort of give one sentence to budgetary support, maybe beef that up a little bit, right?
Yeah. And just because you've been doing such a tremendous job with such austerity throughout these couple of years, there's no reason for you to continue that. So we feel for you and we're grateful for the good work you've done despite that. Thank you.
No, thank you. We appreciate it. From the training unit standpoint, for us, the plan is really in certain regards aspirational in the sense that this is really what we would love to be able to accomplish in the next 3 years. However, we know that we don't have total control of the system. We are heavily still reliant on, the cooperation from agency ethics officers. We're still trying to manage a significant volume of data discrepancies, and just simply being able to identify the correct population of employees that need to take training within a certain cycle. In addition to that, we love, the feedback provided to us earlier, by Commissioner Scott. We welcome having, quarterly or every 6-month meetings so that we can revisit the plan, because for us, the plan is really fluid, right? Like, this is what we want to be able to do. However, the reality is that we are also dependent on the cooperation of agencies and for our tracking system to move away from a tracking system and more into a learning management system, which requires the cooperation and resources from ITS, which we frankly don't have control over. So, we welcome the opportunity to be able to kind of meet on either a quarterly or 6-month basis so that we can give you more than numbers and be able to let you know, like, these are the current barriers or challenges that we have. These are the areas in which that we've learned we need to spend more time and resources on. In addition to that, these are the areas in which we've kind of concentrated our focus. And I think by doing that, the plan in itself, throughout the 3-year period will cover more than what you just see on paper right now. The plan has to be fluid in order for it to work.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before we close the meeting?
No.
If I can just add one thing, and having looked at the tapes or the videos from before, I just want to compliment the team. Very impressive. I know from a budgetary point of view, challenges, but the amount of outreach, the amount of training that has come across both today as well as in prior videos that I've looked at of the commission, both meetings and the committee meetings have been impressive. So I just want to give my compliments to all.
I did all that. They've done an outstanding job. Thank you, Elena and your staff. And, so then we,
And Michael, Director of
and
Ethics.
Michael, sorry, Michael. I don't get to call you up against Michael.
I
I'll have to work on that.
can give you his number.
Thank you. Speed dial. Thank you. If there are no other, so we agreed that we will submit this report. If there are any wordsmithing that you care to do, I hope you don't, feel free to send it off to me and we'll make sure that we include it in the final draft, in the final document. If there's no other questions or comments, I'd like to motion to close the meeting. Welcome,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcott.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be a part of this.
Thank you. So you agree to serve on our committee, is that it?
I mean, I'll follow your guidelines and recommendations if you so desire. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Claudia.
Let's take a vote to
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
second that.
in favor.
Second.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Especially want to thank Marlena and Audrey for just a phenomenal job and really in the middle of all the other work they're doing, putting together the report. It's just outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you all.